Welcome to MotoGP Mac, or as this week's been as MotoGP Detective, as Mac's really done some good work this last week on the news. Surprising. It's just
MotoGP news.
A lot of news out there. It's all been speculation and silly season, that type of thing. But you got a couple solid pieces out there. One being the Aston Martin deal for Honda. That's big. People don't understand it. They don't get it.
Yeah, the Aston Martin type. But look, before we get into it, I have an admission to make.
Okay.
I was wrong once.
We're all wrong every once in a while.
Yeah, so I got mixed up between the new F1 regulations kicking in the start of 2026, but obviously building for 2025. So last week I was thinking it was 25 regulations, the end of 25, and the regulations are changing, but it's actually 27. So I just put my hands up and say, well, it's fucking wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, so anyway, in F1, run it by me again.
That's right. In F1, yeah, the regulations are changing for 2026.
Right.
And for MotoGP is 27. They're changing. But
27. I was wondering. I thought it was 27, but I wasn't sure because you know that stuff better than I do. You keep track.
So and the regulations changing just for conform thing. I did put it up on the website, but I think there is 100% synthetic fuel. A removal of rear right height is in discussion, and limiting Aero is in discussion.
So that's ridiculous.
They are the three talking points for 2027. Anyway.
Oh, for 2027?
For 2027. They're the major talking points.
That'll be switched around by 2027. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the old timers with one hand shit in the other. Because there's no way of doing it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You know. FIM says, well, we want them to go around the corners faster, we want it safer. Well, I don't know how else
I don't think they want them to go around the corners faster anymore.
Well, let's put it this way. It's not that they want them to go around the corners faster. They said, we expect them to go around the corners faster. That's the way. That's the route of safety.
Yes and no. I think
I'm just going right off there what they said. Verbatim.
Yeah, personally myself, and I had this discussion actually this morning with someone in the BMW Motard garage. Yes and no, right? They do want them to go around the corner safer, but not necessarily faster. And if you look at the majority of the European circuits that we go to now, the bikes are getting too quick for the safety barriers around the circuit. Riders are reaching the barriers, right? Which for me is a big fucking no anyway, right?
They gotta be moved. They got to be moved. One thing about barriers is a known entity. It's always worked. It's the one thing that's always worked. Everything else is failed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But look, that's what I mean is that, like, if you look at what happened in Catalonia, they reprofiled the corner, the famous corner, towards the end, right? But for a couple of years, you know, it took them time to move those back. So, like, I know for 100%. There's a few corners in Circuit Catalonia they can change. If you look at Portimao, is another circuit right up the top, while it actually goes down into a big steep hill off the back of it, right? So you can't push the barriers back any further. Well, you can, but it's a massive, massive, massive cost. So there's stuff there. So I personally think that they're going to be looking at the regulations, not to make the bikes. I think they're going to try and actually make the bikes slower. Like, realistically, if you're attending a track.
That's always a disaster, though. That's always been a disaster when they try to make the bike slower.
Yeah. Well, look, they're just put in more regulations, in my view, just so that they can't either generate the downforce, the horsepower. Whatever. Which is always
that's always a screw up. All it does is make you can't make the thing slower by making the handle worse.
It's not.
It's always makes more crashes. You know?
Yeah, but like, let's just take Aero for example, right? You can now go deeper into the corner on the brakes.
But you're going
You don't
to
have to brake.
but you're going in safer. It's more stable.
Huh?
You're going into a more stable.
Yeah, but to outbrake someone, you're
Right.
actually pushing yourself way past the limit of what you would normally do it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
Whether you're going in safer, you're going in more stable. You got more traction.
but,
If you take that,
yeah, but
if you take that Aero off, you know they're going to crash. That's what you call it.
I think you're wrong in that. I think if you
remember
take the
we had
Aero
which
off,
on. He said the same thing.
Let me finish.
Okay.
If you take the Aero off with the current regulations, yeah, you'll crash. If you take the Aero off and they've all of a sudden you don't have rear ride height, so you're not coming out of the corner as fast, or you're not accelerating as fast as you could be, you are not at the terminal velocity that you would be in the old regulations by the end of that straight. And therefore,
if you don't have the rear ride height, you're not going in as stable, and that you're
coming out. You could be high sided. Do you know what I mean? Like old days. Do you know what I mean? Like, look, there's to and for it.
Yeah, you're more likely to come out high side without the rear ride height because it's a higher center of gravity.
Yeah.
Remember Simon went over this with us too. He used to say the same thing, and then he said, "No way." He found out there's no way you can take the Aero off now.
But yeah.
Every engineer said, "No way."
Jake, you're going down the road of taking Aero off. They're not taking Aero off. They're reducing the amount of Aero.
Well, even reducing it, one half dozen the other. You know what I mean? You know, that's like getting sort of pregnant. You know.
Well, no, like it's where Yamaha are right now, right? Ducati, the Europeans all have full Aero. Yamaha don't.
Right.
So I think that's where they're still going to go around the corner. They're still going to handle exactly. And
Yamaha's saying they're crashing. The thing doesn't handle. They'll handle the bike's a mess.
That's because they put more horsepower to it, and you know that. It's not the fact that of the Aero is causing them to crash, or it's not lack of Aero either, because they don't have the horsepower to push Aero.
So I can tell you from watching this shit for ages, 1,000 years, every time they try to make the bike slower, do this, it's been a disaster, Mac. That's been doing that before you even were watching this stuff. I'm telling you.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Look, I think they're.
I'll go with the Aero. I'll go with the aerodynamics and the engineers before I'm going to go with somebody guesstimating.
No, look, I understand what their intention is, and like their intention actually is to stop the fucking Aero race, to stop the multi-million-dollar developments that are going on. Like
that's just the name of the game, though. If you're playing,
to develop Aero, even ask any Formula One team, 90% of their development budget is CFD, wind tunnel, and Aero development.
Yeah, but that's it. It's an expensive sport. What do you want? You know, you can't.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but you have to understand, Jake, that MotoGP up to 5 years ago, realistically, was about the engine and the tires and the chassis. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And now all of this is coming in. Dorna is afraid. Dorna is very afraid that all of a sudden MotoGP will get too expensive for manufacturers. Too expensive. What would I call it? What would I call it? Too expensive marketing campaign for manufacturers.
To justify the cost. But I'll tell you what, the myth that's going around. It's not a myth. I told you if you look at Ducati, if you look, all the European sport bike sales are doing record sales. It's the Japanese that are going down the tubes. Because nobody wants to buy a Japanese sport bike.
Yeah, but look, that just goes back to the old-fashioned saying of what wins on Sunday sells on Monday. So that
and they don't win any. That and I know what a big thing is. Realistically, and they've been doing it a long time. People buy bikes off of those comparisons. You know, the super bike comparisons, the shootouts, like the magazines. You remember you were a kid, everybody said what bike was the best in the magazines, the top 10, blah blah blah. People been buying them off of that forever, and the Europeans haven't won one in 15 years. Not a single one in 15 years straight. So
personally, myself, look, I never decided to buy a bike based off of magazines, articles.
A lot of people do, though. A lot of people do. Most of them do.
I wouldn't. Well, and look, that kind of for me, like maybe it's just because I'm like, okay, well, that fella knows what he's doing, or that fella has a certain riding style, or whatever it is. Like, I don't know. Like as I was just telling you this morning, I was looking at a BMW S1000 or
Yeah.
and look, they're absolutely stunning bike, stunning bike. But like, and I'm just like, do I fucking need that? Do you know what I mean? That's what was running through my head. Do I know it handles well? I do. Do I know it'll take me time to adapt to it? 100%. Would I just pay out the nearly 30 grand for it? It's just like, I live in Ireland. I live in a shitty back roads fucking town. Do you know what I mean? Where will I realistically use 200 and odd brake horsepower? I won't. Do you know what I mean? And probably then the shame of it all would be that I would be probably faster down the road in my BSB spec Yamaha R6.
No, I don't think you would.
I've eaten R1s on the R6.
Yeah, but they're really good now. But
No. This is a 2020 R1.
No, I know.
But you have to understand the windy roads of Ireland. They're not for a heavy bike. Not for a heavy bike. And your man, you could see your man when we were going through the corners, your man was just pushing the front all the way through it. And I was it was the first time I actually felt small and nimble in my life. But anyway, yeah, so look, I don't know. I think the regulation changes. It's all up in the air at the moment. Like last minute.com, they could decide not to do anything. I think new regulations are going to come in to try, and they do with Formula One. And I think it's probably been one of the best situations that they turned around and they said to Formula One, I think the budget cap now is like 130 million.
Yeah, but that's like, you can't do out Formula One because it's like apples and oranges. They have so much money and spend so much, it's insane.
Exactly. But like when you look at it, right? So if you look at the team, just say the team's towards the back of the grid. Let's just take Williams, right? They use a Mercedes engine, Mercedes gearbox, right?
Right.
So and hybrid system and whatever. So all they're responsible for building is the chassis and the aero.
Right.
That's all they're responsible for building. Like their brake discs, ducts, and all. Well, sorry, brake discs and stuff. They're all standardized equipment, right? But they would have their engine deal would be X amount, and then they would have majority of their running costs are staff and development, right? And I think that's the way MotoGP is going to go. There's going to be a budget. There's going to be a leveling of re-leveling of everything with a regulation change, which is normally what they do. And then they bring in a budget. And then they will say, you can only spend X. And that, in my view, to the other manufacturers out there, like BMW, all of these will start bringing these people in because they're going to say, okay, Honda can spend 90 million, develop an amazing bike, and no one will be able to catch it. Whereas Ducati, let's just say there's a regulation change and Ducati are starting from a blank sheet of paper again. It might take them 10 years to get it right. Do you know what I mean? So I think if they're going to change a regulation, they're just going to need, because being honest, I want all the manufacturers in there. I would love to see BMW, and Suzuki back, do you know what I mean? Kawasaki back, and look at all the different colors.
Oh, well, Suzuki and Kawasaki, they were never into it from day one.
Yeah, but look, it was a promotional, it was a marketing thing, and then they felt obliged to because the other Japanese brands were in there, and Billy Big Balls was there. Do you know what I mean? And then it just got not worth the it's not worth the money.
Oh, no. In their case, it was. I'll tell you what. In their case, it was other factors. Don't forget, they had already went bankrupt 10 years ago. They were already going bankrupt anyway. Anyway you look at it, they were bankrupt again because their sales were nothing. Okay, they don't even sell a GSXR anymore, right?
They do here. You can buy them. So.
Huh?
You can still buy GSXR 600s and thousands.
Is the 600? You still saying that? Well, okay. Well, most here they don't. I thought. I read Europe didn't have it.
No, you can still buy one.
There's no GSXR 1000.
There is, yeah. Yeah, it's a big, massive fart can on the back of it, about fucking 2 miles long. About fucking that thing.
You have to show me that one because I've seen it 100. I must have seen it 10, 15 times where it said they're done.
I don't know, but they're still available in Ireland. Still available. Now they're not racing in BSB. I think there's
what I'm saying is they're not. There's no. You go to a dealership. There is no GSXR 1000 in 2020. There's no what. They don't make them.
Yeah, you can buy a brand new one here. Yeah, 100%.
All right, I'll bet you beer on that one. Okay, I can't fathom that. I can't believe they'd be so wrong.
Yeah. No. You can still buy them here. Just looking at the websites here, 100%. Buy a brand new, spanky new one in Ireland anyway. Anyway, now Ireland will be very different to the States. There wouldn't be too many dealers, especially on my side of the country, would have 5 brand new GSXRs in stock. You'd walk into the showroom, you'd order it, and you get it. Do you know what I mean? Might be 2 or 3 weeks, but you get it. Whereas you would see in the Honda dealership, there'd be a couple of new Hondas. At the BMW, there'd be a couple of new ones, but and Yamaha then is the other side of the country. If you wanted to get a Yamaha, you'd have to go to Dublin. One person reached out, and I did get back, but I must get back to them as well about coming on the show. So we'll try and get you on the show, CB, for next week. CB is an Atlanta, Georgia man, Jake. So he's your side of the pond. Cool. And he rides a Yamaha. I haven't got back. I did initially get back to him, but I haven't fully got back to him on his second email. And my apologies. It's not that I forgot you, but it's just flat out. But we'll try and get you on for next week. He's a pretty nice looking R1S 2017, and he's a Yamaha FZ07. So nice.
Okay.
And yeah, lovely little garage there that he has. So yeah, look, it's so we'll definitely get him on the show next week. I'll just try and touch base with him as well. It's just so people know, right? Normally what I do is I have a chat with you offline, so we'll probably catch up on camera beforehand just to make sure that you're not weird. So anyway, what do you think about Watanabe's update during the week?
I don't know. He's leaving. You're talking about Marquez leaving? Marquez is leaving.
No.
If you look at if everybody thinks he's staying, there's what incentive does Marquez have to stay?
So when I originally looked at this, I thought, was this Honda doing the poor gob, is what we call it in Ireland, or the baby face of like, oh, little cute puppy face of like, oh, please stay, Mark. When it came out with Pooch, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, we can't force him to stay. But personally, myself, I genuinely think that there was fairly severe words in Mugello. And if you remember when he crashed in Mugello, do you remember his reaction to that? I was like, for fuck's sake, shouting at the bike. So I reckon he went into that race in a pretty bad mood anyway. And then this happened. And I think that's probably the deciding point where he's like, you need to show me fucking something or what. So I think, there's still not a lot that Honda can do this year, right? Like this year is completely written off, right? No, it was completely written off when Mark broke his thumb in Portugal. Do you know what I mean? Right. For me, he missed a couple of races, and while there is plenty of scope to come back, I just think again it was just like he lost the run of the Honda again, and lost his confidence with it. And now they're in a stage, I suppose, where Honda are not showing him anything. everything that they've tried has failed. You know what I mean? And like, I don't want to be too harsh on Calix here either, right? Because this is their first proper crack off a MotoGP thing. They originally went off what I would assume is that they went off data measurements and specs that Honda gave them, and then it would be tune it out from there. So, like for me, like from when the first one hit the ground, it's a 12-month project, and to tweak that into a chassis that's conforms. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So look, I personally do think he's on the way out. I think he's had severe words with Watanabe, and just in the way that the Honda are reacting, kind of saying, look, if he doesn't want to ride for us, we won't force him.
I think that's from having they already had Marquez already had an out clause, because back, like he's saying, back to 2019, he was not happy then. He was very unhappy then.
Yeah,
before he got hurt, he was very unhappy.
Yeah, but I just think
money to have a replay of Honda's podcast after he won the title. Did you ever hear that? The one who's he got half a bag on. No. He was a little loopy. He had a few beers after the thing, and he's going, "Oh, the handle's hard. This thing is crappy handler," in his broken English. And he's talking, and he's talking to the crew chief. I just tell him to give me power because the thing can't go around a bend. The big spark off to when HRC said anybody could win on the bike.
All right, okay. Well, look, yeah, look. I just think personally, I think it is that the exit clause has been spoken about.
Yeah,
I don't know whether it has been fully activated, right? But then Honda are kind of gone into PR mode. Let's just call it that.
Yeah.
Oh, look, if he doesn't want to stay with us, we're not going to.
Right, exactly.
Rather than that he's leaving because he doesn't believe in the project.
Damage control.
Yeah, a small bit of damage control. Yeah. Like, I think they were hoping with the tie-in between the four-wheel categories, which I actually believe is actually the F1 team, to be very honest. It's not the Japanese four-wheel department. I think that they're looking like, I would presume that Aston Martin and they have started working, and Honda has started working on their 2026 car. So the regulations obviously will change in 2026. So we're in 2023 now. So their regulations change. I would believe because of the tie-up of that they're now, Aston Martin don't have their own wind tunnel yet. They're almost finished building it. They currently use Mercedes F1 facility because they have a deep link with Mercedes. Again, Aston Martin use Mercedes engines, gearbox, hybrid systems, and all of this. But what I genuinely think is going to happen, though, being honest, is that Aston Martin would have a major CFD department. Do you know what I mean?
They just put that brand new building up. It's the biggest R&D building in the world. Remember I said, when it come up, I said that would have been a great deal for Honda. Everybody laughed. Yeah. What do you mean? He's not allowed to do that. I said, it would be a good idea.
Yeah. But Honda, now you have to remember, in F1, it's not Honda. Okay? It's HRC. So I genuinely think when they took on, and this is something that happened to HRC, when they took on, I think it was 2012, was it? 2012, they moved all their engineers into that HRC F1 project, the hybrid problem. And then maybe with MotoGP was not a thing. They had Marquez winning. It was not a priority anymore. Now they're winning the World Championship with Max Verstappen in Red Bull. And the MotoGP team is in this shit tank. So I think the priority now is going back to that, right? And it's Honda and HRC are suffering, and this is why I found it very interesting to see that the second in command of Honda also got involved in this conversation with HRC. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's savage pressure on. I personally think, and I know this might not be a popular opinion, they need to get rid of Marc Marquez. And they
I do too.
on building a bike.
Building
Build a bike that can be somewhat competitive. When I mean somewhat,
you're not as low as you think. I've read out there, and a lot of the insiders say the same thing. Necessity is the mother of invention. When was the last time they had Honda had a bike that everybody could ride? 2001. When did they have no rider? 2001.
Yeah,
really?
No, look, like for me, and like I documented this from the results, and it was like the end of 2018 or 2019. You could see the performance of number 2 rider go way down in Honda, right?
Right.
And that for me was the trigger point of where we are now, right? Because they knew 4 years ago there's a problem.
Yeah, and they lost their second alien. I mean, Honda had 2 aliens until 2018. They had Pedrosa. I mean, that's a rare sight to begin with.
Yeah, but no, to be fair, right? Like they brought Jorge Lorenzo in, who's a fucking alien, right? But he couldn't ride the bike.
He could. Yeah, I think he was done. I think his head was gone.
Yeah, but look, he was still a top 5 rider, even with his head gone. He was still that good that he was a top 5, top 10 rider. He couldn't get fucking anywhere near it.
No, I know. It was the Honda Goldwing.
Yeah.
If you get Goldwing, you're gonna have a soda holder, cup holder.
But look, I just find it very interesting though that the whole situation. We got a couple of comments then as well about last week we were slating Mark and this week we were kissing his arse. Firstly, I would never kiss Mark Marquez's arse, right?
No.
Right. Secondly, I say what I think, right? And I will not apologize for saying what I think. Is Mark a fucking saucy bastard on the track? Absolutely. Is he a nicest person that I like? Not particularly. Is he a really, really good fucking rider? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if he acts the bollocks or the asshole, 100% I'll call him out on it. Or if I think what he's done is a bastard or a piece of shit of a move, I will say it.
Yeah.
If I think he's done something well, I'll also say that. And if I think he's a good rider, I will also say that. And it's called being unbiased and genuine.
Yes.
And if people have a problem with it, fuck off. Right? Because it really irks me when people say, oh, you're being whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not. I'm talking about completely different situations. And if you don't understand it, Anyway, rant over.
We've been the straightest. You and I have been the straightest website, Christ, across the board since we started, be it manufacturer or riders. We just call it's popular just, or not. It makes no difference.
Yeah, look, I know that's the whole point of the film of this site and podcast and whatever, and like the chats that we have are not meant to be PR or you know what I mean. This is designed that is people talking down in a pub. That's the way it is. Go to a friend. Anyone that watches soccer in a bar has always seen people shouting at the fucking ref, calling him a prick or whatever it is, or the player or whatever it is. Same deal. But anyway, Alex Rins. I really want him to go to Yamaha. I really.
I think you're 100% on that. I think that's spot on.
Now, Premac turned around and said that Tony Arbolino was also in for that ride, and the door has been firmly closed, is what he said. So he believes it's Rins. I genuinely believe it's Rins too. I think Rins is like, and it's not for the fact of that he hates the Honda bike. And I think there's a problem with the Honda bike that he doesn't like, but I think Rins still remembers that Honda slapped him for him asking Honda to use him. And I think that's pissed him off big time. Yeah. And going to Yamaha, like, it is a bit worrying because Yamaha are so far behind. But saying that, and I firmly believe this, with Honda as well, the only way is now up. So much attention, both publicly and in a corporate world, has been put on their the viewpoint of their performances this year, that they're literally going to turn around and be like, we have to fucking answer this. We have to invest in it. We have to put the funding behind it. We have to get the right people in the right places to do this. So for me, I'm like, maybe going to Yamaha this year is not a bad deal, or staying with Honda is not a bad thing either, because there is nowhere left to turn. There's no hiding anymore that Marquez or Fabio can override the bike and win a championship. There is that dream has gone down the river, right?
And that's sending the Japanese through the roof. They don't know what to do because they're playing it corporate. They don't know what that's what they've always done.
Yeah, and like
they've always relied on them riders to get their ass out of a sling, and now they don't know what to do.
Yeah,
the Europeans always had to rely on we have to make a better bike than everybody else. We don't have the riders aren't knocking at our door. Where the Japanese, they know, hey, we have that big paycheck, and everybody wants that paycheck, right? And we'll just buy the best riders, and we'll get that Marquez to get our ass out of a sling. We'll get that Fabio to get our ass out of a sling.
But that's fine. Like that's fine. And like the way I always look at it about bike racing, right, is that a rider can make up 3/10.
Yep.
So if your bike is within 3/10 of the fastest guy on the thing, that's when you need your alien. Like Aprilia need their fucking alien right now. That's all they need, right?
That's all they need. Yep.
Maverick, Elate, they're good, but they're just not on that level.
Yes.
And that's all they're short, right? And funnily enough, as you would mention it, there's two aliens who are on manufacturers that are in trouble.
Yeah, I know. And as much as I wanted, wouldn't Fabio work so well on the Aprilia? Come on.
I think he would, and I think he would work very well under Massimo Rivola as well. I genuinely believe that Massimo would give him that support to push him past it. Like, look how loyal they have been to Maverick.
Yeah, overly loyal.
Do you know what I mean? And like, if things aren't working, it's a good environment to be in. It's not the old Aprilia Grassini environment. If you look at what happened to Sam Lowes, if you look at what happened to Bradley Smith, there was a lot of coffins in that fucking team, right? Due to performance, but it wasn't the performance of the rider; it was the performance of the bike. So for me, when I look at it, I think it's going to be vital for Aprilia to get an alien, but it's even more vital for Yamaha and Honda maybe to understand what's going on. And you haven't seen this video yet because it comes out tomorrow, Sunday. But there was an interview with Massimo Marigali, who is the technical head of Yamaha at the track site. And he they were just talking about the season, and literally he just said, look, there's a couple of mistakes that we made. He's like, we know fucking nothing. Well, I'm paraphrasing now, but one, we know very little or fucking nothing about aerodynamics. He's like, we're suffering from our delay of understanding these.
Yeah.
Secondly, he said they've gone the wrong direction completely in what they thought they were doing in the winter. So they added more downforce. They added top speed and a power output from the engine, which they did. To be fair, they did. Yeah. If you look at, they're running last year's Aero and they're faster down the straight. So, in my view, engine box ticked, right? But what that has done is that they didn't tweak the chassis in line with the Aero.
And that's surprising because Yamaha has always been so good with the chassis throughout their history.
And what Massimo then said, it was that, and he was like, the bike just doesn't turn anymore. So the lads or the riders, they now have to ride over the edge of the bike to make that bike turn. And the problem with that is, they're now for this season counting on other people falling down and hoping that their riders are still on the bikes and not crashing from overriding the bike to actually pick up the points. And I think and this is what I like about Yamaha.
That's kind of back-assed, though, isn't it?
But I am a Yamaha fan, but this is one of the things that I like. For me, that was a very honest, factual conversation that he said, we went the wrong way. We put on more horsepower. We put on more aero. We don't have the horsepower to drive high aero. We have too much horsepower now, so we can't turn the fucking bike. Do you know what I mean? And we understand way too little about the aerodynamics, and we need to figure that out. And I just like, okay, do you know what I mean? Then you're kind of going and saying, listen, look, they know what the problems are.
Yeah. That same reason that I wrote a post, I said, I'd like to see Fabio stay with Yamaha, okay, so they wouldn't bottom out, because Yamaha, unlike Honda, has more class. They do. They don't tow. They're more straightforward. Honda,
I don't know about that now, because
they're totally.
Remember
Honda's
Mr.
totally
Rossi towing,
corporate, huh?
Remember Mr. Rossi towing.
Run that by me.
Valentino Rossi used to towards the end of it. Now Rossi used to tow Bagnaia all the time. So
I'm not talking about a tow. I'm talking about somebody who goes out there specifically to tow. Nobody's as bad as Marquez. Christ, he'll tow in the middle of a train wreck.
There's always two ways of looking at that. Some are saying, look, that's his or his ultra competitive nature. Some are saying,
Honda fanboys say that's his Honda. That's his ultra competitive nature. Who are you kidding?
Yeah.
You know?
But I don't dislike Honda because of what Marquez does. Do you know what I mean?
I do, because they're the one allowing it. I mean, why doesn't Yamaha say, hey, yeah, you can use a tow? Fabio could use a tow. He needs that extra horsepower. He needs that extra time. Why isn't he doing it? Because he has more respect for the riders.
Maybe, or maybe he realizes that he can't fucking stay with them anyway.
No. I just think you're too tough on. You're being tough on Yamaha because you're a fan.
Of course, I'm being tough on them. They're not. They're fucking. Look at them. But yeah, I think. Yeah, look, I don't think. I don't dislike Honda because of what Marquez does or doesn't do. I do dislike Honda corporates.
Everybody hates Honda corporate.
For the way they spin things. And look, for me, it goes a long way. As if any engineer or senior man comes out and says, "This is what's wrong with the bike. This is why we're not performing," and you can kind of say, "I can actually see that." Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then you're like, okay, that's fine. Now, saying that, if it's the chassis, no, I still think they're in trouble with the engine, right? Because we know, to find the horsepower to push high aero is going to be a mammoth task ahead of Marmoni and the Irish fella Tommaso Kane to do. Whether they can find it, I don't know.
The inline four is a dead end. That's pretty much a done deal.
Look, I still just don't know. Gigi Delinia says that they can still get the power out of it somehow. Now that could be Gigi playing politics, or it could be thing. I will always go back to the fact with any new team that has joined MotoGP has gone with a V. So
and also Gigi Delinia, they asked him if staying with an inline four was a good idea. He said, if I liked inline fours, I'd have had one. Remember? Yeah.
I would have. Yeah. But look, I think they're spot on then, though, right? That they have to understand, realistically, if you were breaking Yamaha's project down, right? You're like, okay, do we have the horsepower to push high aero? No. Do you know what I mean? Do we have less aero options that's still going to maximize thing? So they're going into this aero race now, in my view. If they don't change that inline four, they're going to have to find smart solutions
Yeah.
the Aero race, right? We know they can't push high downforce. That's the reason they're not pushing down high downforce this year. So what will be their upgrade for Aero this year will be very interesting when it comes. I would think it will be coming after the summer break or Misano. I would think Misano probably to get a baseline for next season, personally. And then they need to work on the chassis of like, okay, for example, I'll just put a figure. Say they're putting out 300 horsepower now, and they realize and they do the calculation. Okay, to push this type of Aero to get the same speed, we need 330 brake horsepower. So we need a 30 horsepower increase to push that Aero. Then what is the CFD, or what is the within the CFD of the Aero? What effects does that have on the chassis? So it's a whole combined project where we've been saying this for a good while now, is that the mentality of the Japanese is to build the bike and then add the Aero. Yeah. But what we just broke down there is kind of more so, okay, they all actually are now in sync. So the engine to push the Aero, the effect on the chassis. Do you know what I mean? Not even going into tires and suspension or anything like that. That for me is critical for Yamaha now to understand. Honda also need to understand this, but in a slightly different way. First of all, they need to understand the structure, in my view, of what's going on with the team, because Japan and European teams, they're not talking, as in they're Honda Europe and Honda Japan, and Yamaha Europe and Yamaha Japan are not talking. So I think they need to understand that first. Need to put in a process there.
I don't know. I think they're overriding on that. I think they have to. I think the communications, it's awful, but I don't think it's been going on so long. I'm sure they have that straightened out, or on the way to having that straightened out. You would think after all this time. It's not like.
But I think this season has highlighted it big time. I think this season has highlighted it big time that there's a disconnect, because genuinely, I think that's why that number 2 fella got involved. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I think that there is some disconnect between what was happening at the track and what's happening in Europe. Now, Crutchlow is going to be making a wildcard appearance at Motegi, sorry. So it'll be interesting to see, will he do another one this year, which, again, that's something that I find very funny with Yamaha. They have 2 bikes. They're allowed a certain amount of wildcard riders, but we've never seen one yet. Do you know what I mean? I know one is planned for Motegi, but there's no other plan that I know of yet that Yamaha are going to bring in.
Really?
To run another round. Yeah. Which is, for me, is weird.
They can at this point.
Yeah. Also, I found it very interesting this week that the Yamaha VR46 thing raised its ugly head again. Like, there's no smoke without fire. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And the whole Bezzecchi thing really, really is the trigger.
Yes.
So, I think Ducati want Bezzecchi, but they want him on a Ducati contract. Currently, Bezzecchi is on a VR46 contract. Uzio's mentality is like, well, we are a good team, just bring the factory support to us. Now, this is not the first time that they've had factory support in VR46. Remember Marini, when they're in their first year, last year, he was riding a GP22 factory with factory support. And was it last year? I think it was last year, yeah. And Bezzecchi was on a 21, so look, for me, when I was looking at it, Joe, and Uzio's way of looking at it was like, well, just bring the factory support here. You don't have to give it to Joe Pramac. But I think Pramac is the natural feeder into the factory team. So I know Bastianini went from Grassini in last year, but they already had a full stable. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I just find it very interesting. I personally think that Ducati want Bezzecchi on a Ducati contract, not a VR46, and that is causing the problem. Now, if Bezzecchi goes there, that means Zarco's out. Where does Zarco go? I think Zarco goes to a test rider, personally.
Yep. Yeah.
Or he goes to Mark VDS World Superbikes, who recently launched. I don't know, did you hear about that? So Mark VDS with Sam Lowes is actually going to World Superbike. I'm not sure, is it one bike or two?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I heard that the news came out like 2 days ago.
Yeah, so
okay.
Whether he got to it now, but his manager rubbished, or Zarco's manager rubbished that he would be going to World Superbikes in place at the time of Top Rack. But for me, I think it's just a really weird situation of what's going on there, and I also think that this could be used as, how would I say? This could be used as leverage to get the Ducati bike deal across the line. Because if, for example, if Bezzecchi does not go and Yamaha tend to sort out their shit next year, Bezzecchi on a Yamaha probably is not a bad idea. Do you know what I mean? But that there's a lot of ifs and buts.
Yeah, Bezzecchi on a Yamaha, that ain't gonna happen. Ducati's not gonna let him loose if they don't.
But see, they have no choice at the moment because he's on a VR46 contract.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but God, I can't believe they would do that.
But that's why I'm saying that Ducati would want to manage that.
I can't believe they'd let that loose end dangle like that. Doesn't make sense.
How do you mean?
They would leave that to a VR46 where they couldn't get him out of it.
Well, you see, they have an option on Marco VR46 for next year, right? Which basically Uzio was saying, "Oh, we'll exercise now," right? And I think that's where the stumbling block with Ducati is that Ducati want him on one of their contracts so that they can have things. But Uzio, in my view, is more thinking, okay, long-term future. Okay, if we give you Bezzecchi on a Ducati contract, what's in it for us? We're not going to let Bezzecchi go to a rival team,
right?
Who is not a factory team, I should say. Do you know what I mean? Like, they have no problem releasing Bezzecchi to the factory team. They have a problem releasing Bezzecchi to another satellite team. So they're like, okay, just give us the equipment. Now, for me, I also think that it's kind of a negotiation point for what happens after 2024, whether they're going to say. So, like, for instance, if Bezzecchi was to stay with them in 2025, right? So, sorry, they were to give Bezzecchi and VR46 works equipment for 2024, right? And then, so what would happen for 2025? So imagine if you were Ducati, right, and there's another team there deciding whether they're going to stick with Ducati or they're going to stick with Yamaha for 2025. But their engineers in that team already have access to your say, which is now GP24.
Right.
And then they fuck off to Yamaha the next year. All your data, all the knowledge that those engineers have got from that Ducati, over there. How valuable is that to Yamaha?
Yeah.
How valuable is that to Yamaha?
Christ, that's a lot of, yeah.
So that's so for me, that's where the whole stumbling block is right now with Bezzecchi, is that if they give Bezzecchi a works contract, free whatever, right, and VR46 are putting their foot down and saying, right, if he's not in the factory team, then we want works equipment to run him, and they fuck off to Yamaha in 2024, while they will have the engineering understanding of the GP24 in the VR46 team. And that will go. So if you're Yamaha, you're like, listen, I'll give you fucking free bikes.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Christ, that would be a real stumbling block. That would be a real screw up on Ducati's part. I just can't fathom they would do that. You know.
So for me, this is why they're trying to pull him out of that and bring him into Pramac, where it's a safe zone.
Yeah, at all costs. You know what I'm saying?
So when just say, for instance, right, then when if Bezzecchi goes into Pramac, so it's 24. So for 25, they would have the engineering understanding of the GP23, which is this year's one. But the current Ducati would be a GP25. Do you know what I mean? So it would be 2 years out of sync, which you'd be kind of comfortable with. Do you know what I mean? So
you're telling me that Yamaha would actually have the blueprints and everything for the Ducati.
They wouldn't have the blueprints, but they'd have the engineering understanding. That the team, your man's team, would have that.
Right, I understand. Yeah.
So right. So firstly, they would have, say, Marini or Bezzecchi or whatever, right? Who understands how it feels, right?
Yes. What works, what doesn't. Yeah.
What works, what doesn't, and then they would have, either Marini or Bezzecchi's closest mechanics, so 1, 2, 3 mechanics, and a tire engineer, electronics engineer.
And that electronics thing, big one there when they transfer that over.
Right. They will be supported by
having their knowledge of the engineer's knowledge.
So if you look at it now, look at Jack Miller going over to KTM.
Yeah.
So they hired a rider from Ducati, right? Who's able to give his input. They brought in engineers or whatever. So you're bringing in some of the team around. So they would be able to not give blueprints, because that would be they couldn't give any drawings or anything like that, right? But what they can do is what's in their head is free, right?
Right.
So they would say this, that, and the other. The Ducati does this. So let's just talk about ride height. Before you're going in, you can feel this in the settings or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Blah, 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 blah. And they would have access and be privy to all of that information that they could just bring over. And that's exactly what's happening in KTM as well. All that, like, the longer Jack stays there, the less important he's going to get.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because and I think that's why Yamaha are kind of in pole position, and I think this is why the stumbling block to get Bezzecchi onto a Ducati contract is causing such an issue with VR46, because VR46 are kind of like going, we know what you're trying to do, we understand what you're trying to do, we want the best equipment for our team. So basically what they're kind of trying to then say is that if you give us factory equipment for 2024, they're realistically going to be pushed to give us factory equipment for 2025. Now, the question is, would you be happy paying 20 million in 2025 for a front-running bike, or would you be happy paying nothing and knowing you have 2 or 3 years work to do with a factory? That's the other side of the coin. Yeah.
I have a question, by the way, totally off. But one of our members, 2 of our members were having a discussion, a little bit of argument. And they were saying one said Marquez could go on to a KTM. A satellite KTM, or the Husqvarna, or maybe even an MV, because MV's been bought up by KTM. Yeah. Is that true? I thought that they could work it out.
Okay, so the official line from Dorna is no.
I know that.
Not happening.
It has
Not
to be
happening.
another manufacturer.
Has to be a manufacturer. Saying that though, to be fair, right? If another manufacturer is anywhere near deciding coming into the sport, I personally believe it's a 2 or 3 year project just to get ready.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Is that on the horizon? I don't think so. The other thing around that, though, and this is where the problem comes in, I believe that the grid is homologated for 24, 25 riders. And that
24, I think. Yeah.
24. No, I'm not sure, because you can technically every team can run a wildcard rider in a race, and it could all be at the same race. So I think they can, with exceptions, Joe push it out, but I think majority of the grid is up to 24 riders or 24 current riders. So what happens then is that if they bring in that satellite team, they go to the maximum. So they have no room to bring in another manufacturer. But for me, I think they could give them a license and say, listen, if you want to run a third team, you can. However, should a factory team sign, you're gone.
Yeah.
Because realistically, if you look at it for the likes of KTM, right, it's not actually a lot of cost. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're not redeveloping a bike. They're not doing.
No.
They're not even changing the fucking cylinders on the bike.
No, it's a sticker.
It's stickers. Do you know what I mean? And running another thing. Now, don't get me wrong. It's still expensive. It's 20, 30,000 or 30 million euros, maybe 20 million euros, just say, to do the whole championship. But like these guys or these teams would have, or these companies would have multi-million-dollar, how I call it, is marketing purses that they could use. Is it possible that it could happen? Of course, anything is possible, right? Dorna are very favorable towards Spanish riders. They're a Spanish company, of course they would. If there's a chance next year that Marquez might even just turn around and say, the Honda is so fucking bad, I would prefer to sit in the couch than ride it. The chance or thought for Dorna of Marquez being off for another season might just push that conversation over the edge. So the answer officially from Dorna is no. From experience of Dorna, I would say watch the space that it could technically happen. You have two riders that have massive amount of potential coming onto the grid. They realistically need a team, i.e. Acosta and Marquez, possibly. But then the other side of the coin, I would not be surprised to see Marquez in Gresini Ducati.
Really?
I have a feeling, and this is something that I was just the other day, and I was kind of like, I know the door is somewhat open for Mark in it, and I know Alex is hoping to retain his seat there, but the Estrella Galicia company, who have been supportive of Marc Marquez all his way up, and Alex, I think they could step up and support Gresini, and the Gresini would have the two Marquez brothers. That's just a feeling. There's no thing about it, but I think that as a PR exercise would be massive.
Oh God, yes. KTM's buying out MV, and MV, they already at the KTM headquarters in the United States, they already have MV Super Veloces all throughout the building. There's styling for the style of the building. So they're definitely seriously into building up that brand as a sport boutique brand.
Yeah. Look, I think it look,
and wouldn't that look good for the coming back in the MotoGP who have that sizzle? You know what I mean?
I think
sizzle thing going for advertising.
Yeah, but look, I genuinely think though, MotoGP they're kind of hoping Suzuki or one of those will come back. Look, I just don't know. I just don't know how long it'll take Suzuki to decide to that they need to come back. You know,
I wouldn't count on Suzuki for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, they not only went bankrupt once, they went bankrupt twice, and it's not even looking good. I mean, it's not a good situation.
Yeah.
Car division is tanking. The only thing that has any profitability whatsoever is their outboard engines. Everything else is through the floor.
Yeah, well, look, I guess we will wait and see what happens. It's always tricky to predict in MotoGP. Dorna say no, and then they change their mind in fucking the same conversation. So, bit kind of like myself, to be honest. And yeah, so I think we'll wrap it up there for this week.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we'll catch up again during the week, and keep it safe and keep the throttle open.
Take it easy, folks.